Folks, thank you so much for participating in the Workforce Development Panel discussion this morning. Let's see, just looking at the schedule, we'll conclude this program by about 11:30 or so. And then at 11:35, we'll reconvene back in this room for the keynote speech from Undersecretary Josh Cutler. Just some comments about our sponsor for the Workforce Development Panel. We're sponsored today by Barrett Planning Group. Barrett is not only a fast and personal friend, but also a mentor, and she is also a predecessor of mine from the Plymouth Foundation. If decision makers accepted her, I wrote this last night after the bottle of wine, and I so believe this. I realize now I was kind of indignant because I really love Judy. But if decision makers accepted her forecast about housing and workforce development when she was in this role, we would be in a much better place than we are today. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and Judy absolutely is a giant. Please understand, too, that workforce and housing are significant barriers to our growth in marine tech and economy in Massachusetts broadly. So between the Marine Tech and the Workforce Development Program, you guys had an impossible choice to make. I think you made the right one being here, though, and it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Laura Buckley, our facilitator today.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Workforce Development Panel. Some of you might be thinking, what is workforce development and how does it fit into the broad scope of the blue-green economy? Well, I can tell you, anything with a heartbeat is workforce development. We're here to make mountains move, and I'm just so thrilled to introduce our three panelists today. We're in for a real treat because the wide variety of experience, background, expertise, and knowledge that our three panelists bring to the discussion today is invaluable. So I'd like to start off by sharing just a couple of quick pieces of data. I know with the low lighting and the low, easy voice, it might be easy to close your eyes, but it's riveting if you pay attention, I promise. Here on the South Shore, we are so fortunate. We have the best workforce in the entire Commonwealth. Thank you, Sheila. I'm not just saying that because most of us live here. We have about 580,000 people here residing on the South Shore, calling these coastal communities home. And if you've spent any time here, you know it's a gorgeous place to be. The Route 3 corridor, which is Milton through Plymouth, is the service area of the Mass Hire South Shore Workforce Board, where I had the pleasure of serving. And every year, there's something innovative and exciting coming out of these communities. We're going to hear about some of that today. But of that 580,000, which, by the way, projections show between now and 2030, will be hovering around 600,000 people. And you're thinking, where are they going to live? What roads are they going to drive on? What schools will they be using? And those are all questions that policymakers are thinking about, too. As Stephen just mentioned, the biggest barrier we're facing on the South Shore right now is housing. Housing has become untenable, sheltering in general, whether that's home ownership or rental costs. But workforce development is just one piece of that puzzle and how we get to where we need to be. So we have about 580,000 people here. Within that cohort, we know that our workforce is about 320,000 people. Those are people that are willing, able, and interested in working. So I have some good news to share. If you were to take the unemployment rate for the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts and then make it a little bit lower, you'd have the unemployment rate for the South Shore. So we're typically doing better than the Commonwealth as a whole. Right now, our unemployment rate is hovering around 4.4%. That's ideal. That's just where we want to be. We're lower than the state, lower than the New England average in general, and lower than the United States. We have 7 sectors here on the South Shore that, according to our labor market blueprint, are designated priority sectors. We use public and private investment to grow those sectors and hone the skills for the workforce, not just of today, but the workforce of tomorrow. The workforce of tomorrow is you, it's your neighbors, it's your children, it's the people we see day in and day out. Skills and needs are evolving, and workforce development helps us meet those changes as they come. So thank you to all of you in the room today that are our partners in workforce development from higher education. Thank you, Massasoit, Cape Cod. The people at the Career Center, the state's BizWorks team, people in the trades, our planning council, thank you, Mary, for all of your hard work, because this only happens together. Our communities are a tapestry of people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, and here on the South Shore, the Workforce Board and our partners, we are committed to building that tapestry, to making our communities livable and workable for people on Main Street, in the industrial park, at all levels and educational opportunities. So together as a team, we can get to where we need to be. But today we're going to hear how we're making that happen. So without further ado, I'm going to start with our first panelist, Jennifer Applebaum. Jennifer, the first one here today, and she is a senior manager for the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, colloquially known as Mass CEC. Mass CEC is doing a lot of innovative work, and they're making it tangible and doable for people like me who don't necessarily speak the vernacular of clean energy sector work. But it's exciting to see the change. I've had the opportunity to partner with Mass CEC in the past 18 months, and I have learned so much. We brought their resources, their tools, their expertise here to the South Shore, and we're starting to see some fruitful results. Jennifer is a graduate of Barnard College and CUNY, New York, with a master's degree in education, a former teacher, and an entrepreneur. And if you heard this morning's speaker, you know the value of bringing entrepreneurship skills into the workforce. Her creativity knows no bounds. Jennifer, come on up.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us. I know that there's a lot going on in your lives and also in this conference, so we appreciate both choices. And Laura, thank you for the kind introduction. So I will jump right in and talk a little bit about our organization, a little bit about what we're learning and how that's relevant to today's conversation. So for those of you who may be less familiar with Mass CEC, we're a quasi-state agency, one of many in the state of Massachusetts that works in partnership directly with our state agencies. We happen to sit under Energy and Environmental Affairs, and we've been around since about 2010. Largely what we do falls into the 4 categories that you see on the screen. We have staff that's really focused on accelerating climate tech innovation, and in many cases, really trying to smooth out those really sort of dangerous dips that many entrepreneurs can be exposed to in terms of the life cycles of where you can get funding to where you get to scale. So for those of you who were in the last presentation, I think a lot of what that speaker was speaking about, we try to address those challenges specifically for climate tech. And then we have several teams that are working on accelerating decarbonization. And a lot of what they do is try and solve the sticky problems that really need to be tested at smaller scale, so things, and then can be deployed in a larger setting. So things like, how do you take the incentives that are available to homeowners and make them available to renters? Because otherwise, if we think about our programs only as who owns the home, immediately we have an equity issue when it comes to trying to address climate change. So they work on issues like that throughout high performance building space, net zero grid, clean transportation. One of the sticky things they're looking at in clean transportation is, it's one thing to have an electric vehicle if you have a garage. It's an entirely another thing if you're a renter. But we want everyone to be able to access that kind of technology. So they work in small scale pilots, and then a lot of those solutions wind up being stood up on a bigger scale by the state. Additionally, or the one thing that we do at large scale is we really lean in and support the emerging offshore wind industry, which is certainly very relevant to these communities here in terms of impacts, both that need to be considered when it comes to the environment and also when we look at economic opportunity. And then what I do specifically, I like how Laura said, workforce is everything with a pulse. I feel like I spend a lot of time reminding people not only about that pulse, but that heart. A lot of times in workforce development, the conversation can start to be about how many training seats did you fund? How many people were in those training seats? What happened right afterwards? These are relevant questions, but they certainly erase all the complicated histories and issues that folks bring with them. And so we spend a lot of time trying to help partners be able to develop programs that really truly meet the needs in their community, which sometimes takes more time and more dollars, which are things that folks do not like to hear, but can help us meet the need in better ways. So specifically, if we pull back and think about the blue-green economies, that we have some sort of recent data here, some from our most recent industry report. When we consider the green economy, specifically the clean energy economy, we have over 108,000 workers in the state already in this space. This is pretty recent data from 2023. The blue economy, the most recent data I could find was 2021, but it still gives you a sense of scale, just under 90,000 workers. And there are some workers that are probably represented in both of these pools, but certainly the thing that I would say is right now, there are opportunities in each of these sectors that are increasing the impact of the other, right? So there's increasingly more ways in which these two are intimately entwined, right? So if we think about a lot of the work that's needing to be supported around offshore wind in terms of deployment, in terms of making sure that it's safe for our oceans and that that's being tracked, a lot of that's being picked up by traditional blue economy workers that are pivoting to support that space. Another key area where these two intertwine intimately, and you're going to hear more about that, across this panel, is coastal resiliency. So as we think about resiliency workers, which span many of the occupations you see here, there's a tremendous opportunity for this workforce, and a piece of it is coastal resilience workforce. These are in many cases really good paying jobs, which is certainly important when we consider family sustaining wages or the cost of living in local areas. There are some positions that may come in at a lower scale and require some pathways up in order to really be viable options for folks. The other thing that happens when we think about resiliency workers is that there's a lot of question around timing. And one of the challenges that has been coming around this is often, many times, some of the additional funding that can really accelerate this work is federal funding. And so we all know the challenge of that timing. And so I think in Massachusetts, many of our communities are doing a really good job to lean in to not only make their own commitment, but also to look at trying to pursue federal funds. There's uncertainty baked into that when it comes to workforce questions. And that uncertainty does not have to be a black box of misery, but it is something that requires a lot more thinking than maybe some of us are comfortable with when we have a lot of other things to do as well. So I think that's a place where we have continued need to look at it. So in terms of the work that we do in our department, we really like to think about the work sort of falling into three direct categories. So some of what we're doing is very focused on actual program development and implementing. We have an internship program that's been running since the organization started, served over 6,000 interns. We're always looking to step up and to support more employers through that, and to be one of their early solutions to their workforce. We do other direct work like curriculum creation around career awareness to provide standardized resources for all. But then a lot of what we do, and most of why folks want to talk to us, is we do a lot of funding. And if you're interested in funding, I'm happy to talk to you, so please come find me. And that funding really takes the shape of trying to support initiatives across our priority areas that you see listed there. So it's a pretty wide span from early career awareness all the way into supporting businesses and upskilling of workers. We do that with a lot of deep technical assistance. Laura mentioned, their Mass Hire South Shore is a grantee. I'm actually working with them through their technical assistance. It's an opportunity to share learnings across grantees and across the department. And then that other piece bridges into that last part of we're really trying to think about how do we support not only a statewide ecosystem, but also regional ones, like the ones that you all are shaping today in your participation. So I won't spend too much time on these, but these are the things that we think about from a strategic standpoint in terms of our approaches to that work. And I think that they ripple through any effort, right? So wanting to be sure that what we're doing makes sense with the data, that we're thinking about this from a barrier removal and equity lens, that we're always looking at not only just what it takes to fund the program, but what it takes to fund quality outcomes in the program, both in terms of dollars and support. And then because it takes a lot to get this done, being really committed to the idea that we're not doing it alone. So there's a lot of existing programs. Actually, I know in the last session, someone from Division of Apprenticeship Standards did a quick shout out. Those kinds of works that are shepherded out of labor and workforce development are really important, work that's happening at other agencies around the state, and also federal dollars that are available to get this done. I just wanted to show this one quick map from our needs assessment report, because to me it's a really important one. This overlays environmental justice communities with clean energy workforce training programs. And you can see what I would call training deserts, places where we know we have high priority populations that couldn't possibly access a training that's relevant. And so we really want to use our funding to help solve those issues, because the idea that somebody would be able to go to a training that's, say, an hour away from their home is really one that is divorced from the reality, right? Especially when we talk about, as Laura mentioned, pretty strong labor markets where our unemployment is low. So what we have is a lot of folks who are employed, but they may not be fully employed. And we can't ask them to balance their part-time or less than full-time employment with going an hour away for training, we have to make sure those opportunities are right there in their community. And so these regional conversations are really important towards getting that there. This is not all the logos, because that would be insane. This slide alone is sort of insane. But this gives you a sense of the scale of partners that we're working with. It also gives you the sense that we drive our interns crazy with trying to make all the logos fit on the slide. They did a really good job here. But a scope of the partners that are involved, and this is a really new set of partnership development work. Laura referenced that this hasn't always been present. A lot of the funding that's at Mass CEC for workforce development really has only been active for the last 2 or so years. So most of these partners have started to work together in that time period, and we're eager to expand it even further. This is a quick snapshot of the resources that we have in terms of our programs and overall budgets. This year, we're anticipating about $40 million in workforce development resources that can be deployed towards these kind of strategic efforts that we've been talking about. I think these slides are probably available to you guys on the conference website. If so, you can go, and there's both links and QR codes about some of the different opportunities that are available. We offer multi-year training grants, support for climate critical businesses, lots of training and capacity dollars. I always folks will say to me, I've got this problem, it doesn't fit anything, and I can tell you almost always that problem is a capacity problem through some lens. And so if you have a problem you think it doesn't fit, please talk to us. I'm pretty sure it will. So we can work with you, and we want to. And I mentioned our internship program, which, like I said, has been going for a long time period here, serving many. And what we're starting to see that's really nice, and I think is sort of, for folks who do workforce development, sort of the dream, is that graduates of the internship program have now gone on, had sustainable careers, and are now hiring interns themselves. And so we're seeing a lot more of those stories that have now happened over the decade-plus time period. I mentioned our needs assessment at the outset and the Clean Energy Industry Report. These are 2 really good resources as well, so those are there for you as well. I want to pass it back to Laura to make sure that other folks get time as well, but I'm also really happy to answer your questions either during the panel, or if you want to talk to me one-on-one and I can be helpful in any way, please let me know. Even if you think maybe I can't be helpful, talk to me anyway. I'll try and prove you wrong, and I'll be excited to do so. All right, thank you.
Jennifer is fantastic, especially because she comes with money. Thank you for the update on behalf of the Commonwealth. Jennifer, it's so exciting to see what opportunities lay ahead. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Lara Bright. Lara is the Director of Development and Industry Partnerships for the Atlantic Resiliency Innovation Institute. She is also the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce, as well as a school committee member for Marshfield Public Schools. Prior to her current role, Lara served as fundraising, training, and employee development professional. Lara, we're thrilled to have you. Please come on up. And Lara is going to take us from the state perspective that Jennifer just provided to here local to the South Shore. So we're in for a real treat.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I actually have to correct you, and I don't know if I sent you the wrong thing, but I'm the Executive Director of the Marshfield Chamber of Commerce, not the Marshfield, Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce. That would be too much because I already have so many jobs. So thank you for that nice introduction and that bump in pay. So I'm really excited to be here to talk to all of you about this. I cheated with my presentation a little bit. I actually brought in a video, which I thought would wake everybody up a little bit and be a little bit exciting. So one of the questions that I get all the time that I'd like to answer for you before you watch this presentation is, how did this happen and how did you do this? Currently, I do serve as the Director of Development and Director of Industry Partnerships, but I am a co-founder of this brand new organization. How many of you here heard Jeremy Devaney yesterday or today? Or yes, okay. So we're a little bit, we call it ARI, we're a little ARI heavy at this conference, so I don't want to do too much repeating here. But in our role as Chamber of Commerce, we have an economic development team. And what we found in Marshfield, how many people are familiar with Marshfield? Anybody? Okay, great. Oh, everybody, awesome. So in Marshfield, we have 3 business zones. One is Enterprise Drive, one is our town center, and one is Brant Rock. And Brant Rock is down by the ocean. There's an esplanade there. Most of you are familiar with it. And what we found is that is an underdeveloped and underutilized area that if we look back, we have this great guy in Marshfield. He's all over the Facebook forums, and he posts all these old photos of what it used to look like down there. And to see these pictures is really fascinating because it brings you back to a time when that area looked completely different before my time. But it was a very vibrant business district with lots of businesses, lots of people, and it looks very, very different today. And why is that? So who knows what one of the #1 problems in Massachusetts is for coastal communities? Flooding, yes, yep. So with this flooding, it has completely ruined that area for residents and businesses. So as part of our Economic Development Committee group, we got together and we said, how are we going to change this? And Jeremy and I met with a lot of business owners down there and a lot of residents, and you guys know with FEMA and floods and all the, different insurance regulations and all the stuff that's happening, it's a real challenge for people to live in these coastal communities. It's beautiful, as, Laura went into, and obviously we're all here for a reason, but it can be a real challenge. So we sat down and said, why not Marshfield? Why can't we be a hub in Massachusetts, a regional hub for change in these coastal communities? And why can't we create a workforce development program while we're at it to teach our students and maybe underemployed workers how to do things better and how to make our communities more sustainable. So we talk about all these things, sustainable communities, but all it comes down to is people and what opportunities we're presenting to them and how we can make our communities, here goes my chamber slogan, better to live, work, and play. One other thing that I just wanted to mention really quick is as my role on the Marshfield Public School Committee, as the vice chair, I have run our internship program through Marshfield High School for the past 6 or 7 years. And so with all of these different roles that I serve in, it's kind of like a puzzle, I like to call it, with public and private partnerships that I know Laura also mentioned. So this all came about, which was a 4-pronged partnership, which was the town of Marshfield, Marshfield Public Schools, Northeastern University, and our brand new organization here. So I'm going to ask you to turn your attention to the TV screen so we can kind of tell our story here so you can get a better picture of what we have going on.
People along the coast, especially in Marshfield, are bracing for the storm's impact.
This nor'easter sent the high tide crashing over the seawall in places like Marshfield.
Waves crashing right over some homes in Marshfield. WBC's Anna Myler reports now from Marshfield.
Live in Marshfield with the details on this.
Definitely dealing with some unpleasant conditions here in Marshfield this morning.
Low-lying areas here in Marshfield filled with water pretty quickly.
The high tide early this morning flooded this area of Brant Rock here in Marshfield, making some roads impassable, but overall, the police chief tells us they got lucky with this storm.
There's 78 coastal communities in Massachusetts, 1,500 miles of coastline. This is in our blood. This is something we live with. This is something that we know is there, but it's totally within our control to invest in developing new ideas around this and starting to address how to safely protect ourselves.
We have this crazy idea that we want to bring industry to Marshfield, and we want to create an academy to teach students 4 or 5 years of just trying to get in front of the right people to continue to tell our story. We ended up meeting Jared.
This project is so exciting to me because you have the town of Marshfield, you have the chamber, you have the public schools, you have Northeastern and others all coming together to solve a problem and then creating a skilled workforce to work in that space.
The Atlantic Resiliency Innovation Institute is the umbrella. There's a research facility that is studying coastal hazard mitigation, and there's also an academy model where students can go and learn engineering without going to college.
From the town side and from the Chamber of Commerce side, if we could find a way to stem the tide, no pun intended, of erosion in the Brant Rock area, it's going to help businesses, it's going to help homes, it's going to help the town. And if we could use our schools in partnership to give our students a chance to learn about the science and other components, the engineering that's involved in trying to solve these problems, it was going to help them as well.
Working with a renowned institute like Northeastern University, working with our great school system and the infrastructure that we have in place with our EOC operations. When you look out to the back of me, you look at the ocean, how beautiful it is. What better place to come and study the climate than in Marshfield?
100 years ago, we might have been thinking about the problem, but the tools that we had to solve the problem were completely different than the tools that we have today. Now's the time to do that. There are so many talented people who are underemployed or unemployed that could add value in this space in particular, in which we can help them think about a career.
We've already started putting in place a lot of our leadership team. We're going to be out in the community making connections and building partnerships with other organizations. What our ultimate goal is really is to have a dynamic marketplace for coastal hazard solutions so that other communities like ours don't run into the frustration we do.
Marshfield could be, on an international map as a place where certain solutions were developed, and it could really change our communities across the United States.
Oh, thank you. So just a couple more things that I wanted to add. Thank you for your attention over there to that video. I think that tells the story pretty well of what we're trying to do. With the workforce development piece, we're aiming for our first cohort in spring of 2025. We're calling them students. Essentially they are, because they're going to be learning a few things. But we're taking people up to 25 years old. So it's not just kids that are right out of high school. Right now we're going to do up to 25 years old, because we do believe, as I mentioned before, that there are people that are underemployed or people that just aren't sure what they want to do yet. And 25 years old is still really young. At some point we hope to expand on that, but that's going to be our first cohort. So thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you, Lara. When you put it all together in one video, it's a terrifying summation of our circumstances here. But we're so proud to have Marshfield lead the way here in Massachusetts for coming up with innovative ideas to solve these problems. And no further ado, from state to local to nonprofit, we're thrilled to have Lace Garland with us today. Lace has spent the past 2 decades building environmentally focused career pathways for zoos and aquariums. Currently, Lace has the incredible opportunity to build out the workforce of the New England Aquarium. And perhaps many of you have seen the New England Aquarium, but it is a gem, not just here in the Commonwealth, but the entire Eastern Seaboard. It's the premier aquarium. If you haven't been, I highly recommend going. There's so much to see there, so much to do. But the aquarium is made up not just of the creatures that it houses, but of the people. As was mentioned earlier, the people are the heart of the aquarium, and Lace has helped build that team. When she was explaining to us before today's meeting the programs that she's built there, it's phenomenal. It's taking people who maybe never even considered a career pathway in aquarium work and put them in a trajectory to success, not in a job, but in a career. So Lace, no further ado.
Thank you so much for that. So everybody's probably standing back and thinking to yourselves, okay, what is the aquarium in Boston doing down here at this conference? Over the past few decades, the New England Aquarium has been evolving our understanding of our commitment to our community. And we've been looking at that in 100 different ways. One thing that we think about a lot is climate resiliency. Obviously, with the way things are going right now with climate change, many of the animals and environments that we care so deeply about at the aquarium will no longer be in existence if we don't create change and action right now. Also, if you've seen the City of Boston 100-year flood analysis, if that happens, I'm gonna be snorkeling to work, which is not really my jam. So we're looking at how we can help build resiliency in a lot of different ways, through education, through conservation, and through community and collaborative change. So that's why we're here. We believe that New England Aquarium is uniquely positioned to show that conservation and economic development are not mutually exclusive. And to do that work, we promote a policy portfolio that promotes solutions in expanding blue technology and the blue economy. Our legislative package before the state legislature includes policies that would promote workforce development, including direct investment in the growth of the blue economy, research grants that promote sustainable use of ocean and education funds that expand workforce training and education development in blue STEM industries. So with all that said, why am I standing here in front of you today? I'm going to come at you from an angle of a single organization that's trying to make an impact on marine science and marine science careers and exposure. So my name is Lace. I'm the Associate Director of Volunteer Programs and Internships at New England Aquarium. Been here 12 years, yay. And I carry some funny letters after my name. I am a credentialed volunteer administrator, which is the highest level ranking you can get as a credentialed individual who manages mission-based volunteers. I am also a Society of Human Resources Senior Certified Professional, which is the highest ranking that they give for human resources work. It's a really interesting combination. It's not one you find a ton of out there in the world, but it makes it really, really good to do something like focus in on workforce development, because it doesn't necessarily sit in employment and it doesn't necessarily sit in education or volunteerism. It sits somewhere in the middle, and it's really focused on mission change. So at the New England Aquarium, this is our mission. New England Aquarium is a catalyst for global change through public engagement and education, commitment to marine animal conservation, innovative scientific research, and effective advocacy for a vital and vibrant ocean, which is a whole lot of words to say. We work to protect the blue planet. We do that in a lot of different ways. Here's just a few shots of some of our humans in action doing great work to protect the aquatic world. You've got some of our researchers through the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life on the left. In the middle, you've got some of our rescue rehab team working with sea turtles. And on the right, you've got some of our animal care team who are helping these birds, the penguins, in our colony, but also leveraging the research that they're able to do there for animals in the wild. And when we have done workforce development at New England Aquarium, traditionally, we've had two major programs, both teen internships and college internships. Our teen internship program is fully paid. They're all part-time positions, and they're through the City of Boston and the City of Cambridge. And through this work, we work to build fundamental workplace skills within youth, usually between the ages of 14 and 18. So they come in to our facility and they work in one of two positions at the beginning. Generally, it's either going to be with our visitor services or our conservation learning team, so learning about marine science and teaching others about marine science, and also how to conserve the aquatic world. Alongside this work, we work to make sure that we're elevating their skills above and beyond their daily tasks, because it's not just about the job and the work that they're doing in that moment, it's also about the skills that they're gaining to make them highly hireable as they move forward in their careers. And also, this is really a career exploration focused program. It's about giving exposure to folks that might not otherwise have exposure to this work and getting them really excited so that hopefully they'll pursue careers down the way. And then our other traditional program is our college internship program. And I'm noticing one of our former college interns actually in the audience here. Yay! Hey, how's it going, Emily? So all of our college internships, they have been a standing program with us for over 30 years, and they exist in a traditional model. So they are all unpaid, and they're all part-time. We have 4 cycles a year. They're 12 to 16 weeks each. They are 2 to 3 days a week. So that folks are able to work other jobs or take schooling outside of these positions. They are in nearly every department of the aquarium, and you can see them listed out here. They have a series of required continuing education, which the interns generally roll their eyes at in the beginning, but then love after they've gone through them, that focus on professional development, professional presentation skills, shadowing, networking, building community within the institution, making sure that we're building things like informal interviewing skills and informational interviews, and then career services as part of the program. All of these positions are also designed at exposure, but they are for students generally that are currently enrolled. We do take non-traditional learners in this work, but often these are the students that you would think of, folks that are already sort of interested in marine science or museum operations, and they're coming to us with that intention. So you're now like, where's the workforce development come in? Well, this is workforce development for us between these two programs and also our volunteer program. Traditionally across our organization, 41% of our organization starts as either a volunteer or an intern. And if you look at our animal care roles, those numbers go from 70% to 100%. Additionally, when we're putting folks through these programs, we are focused on climate change, action, resiliency, and being a community mobilizer. So how do you take these skills and these things that you learned, these passions that you gained with our institution, out into your own community at large, and carry that forward also in your own career? But we've noticed a gap. There are significant demographic challenges in this traditional program. As we all know, unpaid internships are really inaccessible to much of our population. And what we know is across the zoo and aquarium industry and the marine science field, because these are jobs that are based in passion, there's something that we call the passion tax. Our industries have grown up paying people less because people are excited to do the work, giving them less resource, giving them less opportunity because they just want to do it. So they're going to get out there to work with a capybara, or in our case, a sea dragon, right? And they'll do that no matter what. So we wanted to start breaking down some of these barriers. And this was really made sort of like critically powerful when we started to look at some of the data coming out of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So you can see in a 2021 report, 70% of all Association of Zoos and Aquariums employees, so across all of the zoos and aquariums that you can think of that are accredited, reported as white. Of all of the paid positions out there, nearly all of them required 1 to 3 unpaid internships before you were able to secure a career. Of the 1,238 internships in AZA, only 9% were actually paid opportunities, and 91% of those had tremendous barriers to entry. So things like having to be in your 3rd or 4th year of a 4-year degree, or even graduated in order to actually secure the internship. So as you can see, those are immediate tremendous barriers. And New England Aquarium took a look at our own data and realized that we were doing the same thing. So 76% of our adult interns identified as white. 28% of our teen internships identified as white, which is really interesting because the only difference between our barriers and things was actually pay. So when we do our paid teen internships, we're seeing different demographics there because we're increasing opening areas of opportunity and resource for folks. 89% of our animal care staff in 2021 identified as white. And that was really startling when you look at the population of Boston, in which 52% of the population of Boston identifies as white. So definitely not holding to our DEIA ideals of representing the community around us and supporting our community in that way, because representation matters. So what were we going to do about it? We designed a new pathways program. So we have just designed an aquarist apprenticeship program. Its intentions are listed here. Providing opportunities to BIPOC individuals of Boston that have been underrepresented in the fields of STEM. Providing professional development and career pathways opportunities that do not require unpaid experiences or a college degree. Creating a diverse pipeline for the aquarium and its partners in marine science. And creating awareness around career opportunities related to ocean conservation and marine biology. We were able to pilot this program through a partnership with IMLS, who offered us an amazing grant to do the work, which is being met by a 100% match by the aquarium. And if we're able to prove viability over the course of 3 years of this program, the aquarium has guaranteed that we will move the program into operational funding, so standing commitment to continue the work. What were the goals of Seek2C? 8 apprentices over the course of 2 years, and a deepened understanding of DEI and cultural competency and mentoring within the aquarium through our employee base, and then a community of practice with partner organizations in the Boston area that are interested in mobilizing on this work as well. And so how are we doing those things? Through an apprenticeship training program, as mentioned, a mentorship training program of our employees to ensure that we are creating a really inclusive community with a strong sense of belonging, and then development of a partnership and community of practice. Our target group here is 18 to 30. We wanted to keep that, again, it was mentioned by some of my colleagues, keep that age bracket really wide because we also want to support career changers that have always had an interest in this work but have not yet been able to gain access. We've been working through partners like the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts and the American City Coalition to do recruitment and also to increase awareness of marine science careers, not just in this Aquarist work, but also in the broader fields of research, conservation, and sustainable careers, blue economy. So that's the fundamental structure on the right-hand side there. A core component of this work is that we are actually looking to ensure that every apprentice that comes through this program ends up with a job. It may not be a job specifically at New England Aquarium because we're still viewing this work as career exposure. So as we're folding these apprentices through their career work with us, they're not just learning aquarist skills, they're actually gaining certifications in environmental quality, water quality management. They're working with our MSOs or machine systems operators. So really gaining experiences across the board and letting them hone in on where they want to take their career. And then our career pathways specialist is focused on all career placement as well. So halfway through the program, we work on starting to secure them their next job. But this is just the beginning. So I said some of these words in the beginning there to let you know kind of why we're doing this and where we're at. We are working on lots of different kind of policies and legislations, and we would love to work with all of you on that work as well. As you all know, being at this conference and hearing all of the amazing speakers and panels, and even my fellow speakers today sitting here, this work cannot be done in a bubble. We want to work together with you to increase diversity, equity, and access across marine science careers, and especially with the focus of sort of sustainable positions and sustainable jobs moving forward. If you have any questions on the policy side, my amazing colleague Anthony is our AVP of Conservation Policy. He's a great resource there. If you have any questions on any of the workforce development work that I've mentioned so far, definitely reach out to me. My contact information is right there. Thank you so much.
Wow. Well, that was incredible. There's so much excitement happening on workforce development right now. And I'm thrilled to have heard the cutting edge from these three organizations. And now it's time for the good part, the Q&A. I'm sure you all have at least one question, so I'll start over here. Anybody? Dr. Savignon?
Hi. My question is for you, Lace, in regards to the apprenticeship model that you have. I see a lot when it comes to awareness for younger folks in BIPOC communities. Why only Boston and not opening it up to other regions, particularly Brockton, which is an urban majority community?
Absolutely great question, and thank you so much for that question. My goal is to take over the world eventually, so so we really did, when we pitched this this grant funding proposal to IMLS, we wanted to make sure it was really honed in with a lot of controllables to demonstrate the viability of the program. So the intentionality behind the program is to start with the Boston community and be able to expand past the Boston community to area communities in the eastern Boston area, but we want to prove viability first with our local community residents. This also helped us to hone in on community partners that were sort of really integral and close to our resident communities that we're working closely with right now on climate work. So,
just gonna deal with that. I find it's interesting, and I appreciate the efforts to open up the apprenticeships and not require college. But have you lost something along the way, and have you considered now that college is free at the associate level, that there might be an opportunity there to not consider those students somehow less than because they don't have the college expectation, and maybe put them on a stronger college path?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's such a great question. So it's really interesting. So one of the interesting challenges that we didn't think about, which you all have probably experienced actually with your programs, is that when we actually started our screening process, we flipped our rubric. So our goal was actually less about not engaging students and more about decreasing barriers to access. So we wanted to make sure that we focused in on individuals that maybe had not yet had the opportunity to get 3 years into their university degree, that kind of thing. I don't think it's necessarily a barrier For a student to be in a 2-year program by any means. We definitely are open to that, but we wanted to target folks that wouldn't necessarily be able to get that extended degree. So it's not about the folks that have already had 3 opportunities with AZA communities. It's about the folks that haven't yet had that opportunity and maybe are still exploring. That's also why we kept it to open to up to 30. We wanted to make sure that it was open to career changers as well. We also have plans and devices to work with some educational partners. We started looking at micro-credentialing and other concepts that might be able to be folded into the work that these students are already, or participants are already doing, that we could then formalize through university partners, college partners.
Well, thank you. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Sarah McCormick with the town of Plymouth. My question's for Lace. Thank you for presenting on the aquarium's plan for opening up or expanding access to the marine science program. I have a background in marine science. I've worked for a fairly large aquarium in the States, not the New England Aquarium, and a number of nonprofits. So I really appreciate you looking at how we can get students who may not be able to do unpaid programs involved in the field. You brought up the passion tax. I thought that was really interesting. I think we're seeing a lot of efforts now from nonprofits and marine science especially to pay entry-level folks. Then there's a time then where your entry-level folks are making pretty similar wages to what your experienced staff members are making. And there's this inequity of responsibilities. And we've talked a lot about the cost of living here in Massachusetts. So I'm just curious with the aquarium, if you've thought about that, and if you're looking for programs to be able to raise the wages of your experienced staff members to make it affordable or accessible for entry-level people to get into the marine science field, but then make it possible for those experienced people to stay, because that passion tax and that inability to support yourself is one of the leading factors of turnover in marine science. So just curious what you've thought about that, as it'll probably apply to all of the blue tech and blue economy jobs we have here in Plymouth.
Such a good question, and something that our institution and I might not have mentioned this before, but I serve on a few national committees for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and so this is something that actually across the industry we're talking a lot about, and I think is, as you mentioned, readily transferable to the blue economy and to a variety of positions, environmental science in general, right, where people are coming in because their hearts are in the work. So I think I heard a couple of things. So I think I heard, what are you doing for your people that are already there? And how are you ensuring that these folks that are being brought in under a different program aren't necessarily surpassing in balance those entry-level folks that are already at your institution? Yeah, so I have a partner organization on the national level, not from anywhere around here, and I will keep their name quiet, who actually started an apprenticeship program similar to this. They dove right in. They got funding from a private funder to launch the program. And then through a series of incidents found themselves in a situation where they were paying above minimum wage for their apprentices. They were paying for their transportation. They were paying for their housing. And suddenly these apprentices were making something like, when you rolled it all together and you considered all of the fold-up benefits, like 15 grand, 20 grand more than their entry-level staff, which you can imagine is a tough position to be in. I also know, being in the city of Boston and having worked my way up through nonprofit, a variety of, I worked at Buttonwood Park Zoo down here on the South Shore in Buttonwood for a while. I also know that making a living wage in the city of Boston when you're working nonprofit is really, really complicated. If you've looked at the MIT living wage calculator for the city of Boston, if you're living in Boston or Cambridge, you have 0 kids, you are a single person, you need to make $65,000 to live comfortably. We're paying minimum wage for our apprentices. there's a big gap there. So in order to support our apprentices, what we realized we needed to do was actually consider other methods of compensation to be rolled into what their experience is. So we couldn't just pay them the $15 an hour. We had to actually look at things like we did an on-site meal plan. So every day that they're on site, we're able to cover breakfast and lunch at the 50% off that our institution gets through our partners. So there's like a whole bamboozling that goes on there, but it works out. We provided MBTA passes. We are covering the cost of certifications in a variety of different ways. But yes, that all rolls up together, and it does provide an extra value add that maybe some of our entry-level employees aren't getting. So we did a second thing, which was take a look at, a couple of years ago, we did a full compensation study matrix with an external partner and took a look at all of our roles. And we've actually gone back through and done some major evaluation on the salaries that we're providing folks, looking at our market partners, both in Boston and also across the country, and made some major adjustments at our grade levels. And then when we built this program, we put a grade level 0 in, which is all career pathways and career exploration. So anything that isn't actually designated to be the job that a person is working in and expected to stay in, but is more focused on exposure and everything, is actually at a lower grade, which receives X many dollars an hour less at entry than those other roles. So when we've done the full package analysis, they're getting close, but they're not actually surpassing those entry-level staff. So supporting entry-level staff by actually taking a hard external look and getting told, hey, you aren't paying your people enough, right? Finding other full benefits packages that we can add for those entry-level staff, making sure that there's distinct grades and doing a deep analysis on what we actually are folding into apprentices. And then also being ready as an institution to stand up and say, hey, this is the right thing to do. These are folks that are otherwise excluded and have been historically excluded from this work. And it's the right thing to do, not just for our organization in terms of DEI, but also for the industry, which is needing this work as well. Does that make sense? Sorry, you got me on a little bit of a soapbox there.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Abigail Archer. I work as a fisheries and aquaculture specialist with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Sea Grant, and I'm a proud New England Aquarium 1998 penguin intern. Fantastic experience, but this whole conversation got me thinking about my experience and what worked and what didn't. So quick comment and then a question for you all. When I did the penguin internship, it was only 2 days a week, which actually worked because then I worked. So it was 2 days a week, unpaid, and that was the only requirement because then I could work the other 5 days a week in a paid job. So that flexibility of days built in helped me be able to support myself. The other thing that helped me do it is that I lived in Braintree. I was living with my family still at the time. So I had MBTA access from the Braintree station all the way into Boston. So in all three of you, all the goals that you've talked about, what role does transportation or lack of it play in you accomplishing your goals? And then are there things that you feel like the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can be doing to help you with those transportation goals? Like what's missing right now?
I can start.
Okay, I'm like, I'll go first.
Sure.
Who's going first?
No, you can go first. No, it's okay, go ahead. Transportation is by and far one of the biggest considerations that we have around support services. And I would say one of the biggest challenges is not just, a lot of times we're able to think about transportation during training quite efficiently. That's less of a barrier. Actually, for us, and many times it's the transition from someone having completed training to then early placement, and a lot of the jobs having very different locations, schedules, and considerations than a training. So if we think about in many cases where communities cite trainings, they usually do try to do it in places where there's a little bit more public transportation support. And then also many of our training programs have been able to look at solutions like, and this is not something Evergrant will do, but like we have grant funded things like shuttle buses, for training programs where it's like they need to get everybody to and from the training. So it's definitely a huge consideration. One of the things that we've been trying to explore are opportunities to address this through public-private. So in May, the governor announced the Massachusetts Climate Careers Fund, which is a partnership between state agencies and an organization called Social Finance. What that solution provides is outcomes-based loans that are forgivable. So in addition to many of the stipends that we can provide, some of these programs will be able to do things like provide an $8,000 loan upon completion with zero interest so that somebody can actually get a car, access those initial down payment for initial payments or invest in more transportation solutions. And then they only have to repay that if they meet the minimum income threshold set by the program. That's one solution that's loan-based. We've also been looking at what do we offer in terms of additional direct funding that doesn't require any repayment, and how can we look at even some of the innovative solutions that are stepping up around clean transportation with ride sharing to make sure that folks have access to it. I would say all of these things don't eliminate the need for greater advances in just mass transit across the state. And so it's a constant conversation. One of the things that I think is actually sometimes hardest when we talk to potential applicants or grantees is getting them to realize that as a funder, we might consider paying for those things and looking at those solutions, because I think for so long funding has not included that, or it's included more like bus passes, and so folks haven't thought they could access beyond that. But it is something that we factor in, and it makes a huge difference in folks' ability to access from training onto the job, and then also to persist into roles where they can advance.
So this is a really difficult question with not a lot of great answers, especially for organizations like mine that are on the South Shore. And what I have noticed is that I really think that we need to change the conversation around transportation, especially with the demographic that we have here on the South Shore in particular. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Promise I'll make it short. But just to put this in perspective for you. So as the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, we received a grant for some sort of transportation, because that's something that we talk about all the time. We have huge problems in Marshfield where students can't get from school to our Boys and Girls Club or from school to the library, and their parents or guardians, caretakers are working and they can't pick them up, and these people can't get around town. Also in Marshfield, we have a huge elderly population that can't get around. So that's where our elected officials come in for a lot of help, and our private partners that we have. But we received a grant from Josh Cutler. He's actually here today. He's going to be speaking later. And before he's moved into the role that he's in now, he represented one of the areas in Marshfield, so he came to work with the Chamber of Commerce there. And he got us a grant for a trolley. And when you think about a trolley, I'm like, yes, this is awesome. We have this trolley. We can go around town. It's going to be great. We're going to put people on it. They're going to be excited. So we had this idea that we were going to trolley people to the beach. And I thought it was a great idea. And we got to town meeting, and we talked about it, and people went bananas. And it was like, where are these people coming from? They can't come to the beach. What are they doing? And I was totally caught off guard. I wasn't looking at it from that perspective. I was like, nobody owns the beach. What are you talking about? This is a public place. But my point of telling you the story is that it got shut down, and we weren't able to run a trolley that sat 30 people in Marshfield because the conversation is wrong. And the narrative around it is wrong, and I blame us for that, for not talking about it enough and what transportation actually is and how it affects and benefits communities. So what we ended up doing with that trolley, because we did get the grant, is we ran a Christmas lights tour. And that might sound funny to you, but the reason why we did it is because I wanted to showcase to our community that we're able to pick up 30 to 50 people and move them from one place to another, and it has zero impact on this town. And when you change the frameworks of that conversation and you actually show people that what you're talking about it's a non-starter, it's not even a conversation, what you're saying makes zero sense, it puts it back into perspective and lets us actually do the great work. So I don't have an answer for this transportation question, but I think it starts, from like she said, getting stipends and getting funding and all that, and comes, from the top down, and us doing a better job as community leaders in showcasing what things can be in our communities.
Well, thank you very much. We have time for one more question.
Sorry, that was... yes.
Come over to Randall Lyons.
I don't necessarily need a microphone. Especially our question for Laura. So I'm Randall Lyons. I'm with the Mass Marine Trades Association. We represent the recreational boating industry in Massachusetts. We have probably a handful of members in the Marshfield area. Many of them were on that video, which was nice to see. Yep. We are working with Mass DEP, and hopefully you're aware of this with their waterway regulations and proposed regulations that they've put out recently. We've commented, we've sent comments to the coastal communities, the town administrators, Chamber of Commerce, because of the effects that these proposed regulations may have on coastal communities, on businesses, on homes as well. The reason I'm bringing this up is kind of part of your presentation. You were talking about the technology that focuses on coastal resiliency and really capturing technology and knowledge that's already out there. For us, that's huge because a lot of our member businesses are family owned and operated. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. So they're used to adapting to storms and high water coming in and out. However, these new regulations are going to be, they could be very much detrimental to the businesses and to the homeowners if implemented the way they have set them up. And again, I'm kind of assuming you know about this just based on some of the technology that's out there and some of the problems that this could create for businesses. But based on the information and the work that you're doing, I'd love to hear some of some potential solutions that this may, that the work you're doing may create for the marinas and boatyards that are working on solutions to climate resiliency in the future. And I'm happy to give you some information on those regulations.
Sure, so I have no idea what you're talking about, but that's okay. I'm going to blame Mike DeMeo. He is on our Chamber of Commerce board, and he is the chairman of the Waterways Committee, and he knew I was coming here today, so for him not to tell me that, he's going to get a phone call when I leave here. No, I'm just kidding, it's fine. But, it's... What we've found is that, and I'm going to try to answer your question. If I don't, please use your loud voice and tell me again. What we've found is that there's a lot of data out there, and there's a lot of data collectors out there, and there's not a lot of people doing things with this data. And by partnering with Northeastern, what we have gotten access to a lot of different people that we wouldn't normally have access to. We actually were contacted by NASA, and they have this SWAT satellite, it's called, that makes trips around the Earth and can see the grains of sand and into the ocean about this big. And so what they proposed is that they would, they're doing this data and they're doing this research, but no one's doing anything with it. So yes, they have this great satellite and they're collecting all this data, but it's not going anywhere. So as part of grants that they're applying for, they need community organizations, boots on the ground essentially, to take their data and use it. So what we're hoping is that we have partners like Woods Hole, some of the folks that are here today, information like from Mass DEP and the waterways and all that, and putting it all together in our actual laboratory that we have, and have our data analysis people put it together and grab a team of people and see what that actually looks like. So I can't specifically answer your question because, like I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. But what I've found is that there is a lot of data out there that is not being utilized the way that it could be, and we're hoping to change that.
Thank you. And a lot of it has to focus on where you sit in the velocity zone and flood zones.
Okay.
That where the impacts may be on this. It involves construction and insurance, and again, it could be very detrimental. However, there are solutions, especially on the technology side, that we feel can be implemented to work more with Mass DEP to focus on this in the future, rather than just a blanket statement that could have a very negative effect on businesses and homeowners at a time where we're trying to push the economy and trying to bring people to Massachusetts, some of these regulations are gonna do the opposite. So I'll send you our comment letter.
Let's chat after.
A comment letter and
Great,
additional
thank you.
information.
Thank you so much.
Jennifer, do you want to comment on that question?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to comment on that question at all?
No, except if there's a way that Mass UC can help. I don't know what it would be, but certainly happy to try and connect you to the right folks.
And I can share with you that Mass Hire, South Shore, we did do an analysis of occupations for marinas to find out where the biggest demand was and the largest skills gap. And then we created pathway programs to help meet that. We're just waiting for state funding to get us there because we do want to retain people in those positions, help those occupations go from jobs to career pathways. Actually, we have time for one more question. Oh, I'm going to do a few more questions. I'm going to start with Brendan here.
I'm interested. Thank you.
Love that enthusiasm. And then we'll finish up with Cape Cod Community College.
Very quick for Lace. How come there's no arts as part of your STEM orientation?
I will say that my notes said STEAM and not STEM, so I probably just spoke too quickly. But we do involve arts in the work that we do across New England Aquarium. We've got a variety of different roles, both volunteer, intern, and staff positions that involve and engage the arts on an ongoing basis. But if you want to talk more about those programs, I'd be happy to do this.
Well, perhaps I misread it, but I'm glad to hear that arts aren't.
Yeah, it might have been in my notes and not on the slide. Sorry.
So I'm Cheryl Vaughn, Director of Admissions at Four Seas. Just listening to all this is a wonderful opportunity, but I'm going to put I used to be a selectman in Kingston, and I'm actually on the school committee as well. And I love that you're using all your different pieces. I try to do the same thing in my town. You know, the red tape is so difficult sometimes at those town meetings, and I've done them since I was in my 20s, and I say, come to town meeting, come to town meeting. And I think it's so important to talk to your town officials, you know, and I just saw Valerie Massard, who was actually our town planner, and, you know, I'm very involved in some of those things, but being transparent and, you know, hearing those different types of things you're trying to get out there and really talking to your selectmen and getting it out there, being transparent. I work a lot with, like, the local scene. We try to, like, get that out there that we can talk to them and even getting like a 5 minutes of what we talked about at something, because it's not fair that you go in and, you know, 100 people talk down something that you've been working with for 2 years. And so, you know, I try to be really informed to go to these town meetings, and people that are very passionate about it, I just wanted to say, you know, if it's one thing, advocacy, like, you know, if you're passionate about it, you have to go and you have to be at those town meetings and you have to get it out there so that we can have these things.
Thank you.
Anybody else before we wrap up today's session? Well, thank you so much to our panelists. You bring a real mile-wide and deep bit of knowledge. And contact information is available for each of our panelists should you desire to continue the conversation after today's conference concludes. I don't want to get between anybody and the next speaker. He's fantastic, and I highly recommend sticking around for Josh Cutler. Undersecretary Cutler is no stranger to this region, former state rep from this area, and has so much information from the Commonwealth to share with us today. So after this quick break, I highly recommend coming back in. Thank you so much for your time.